We here at the Sports History Network proudly partner with 26 podcasts, all revolving around the history of sports. But did you know that many of our hosts were sports history authors way before they started their shows? It's true. We've got Joe Ziemba, host of When Football Was Football, Joe Zagurski, host of Pro Football in the 1970s, Mark Morthier, host of Yesterday Sports, Tommy Phillips, host of Lombardi Memories, and Scott Adamson, co-host of From the 55-Yard Line. All these authors have many books for you to choose from. To check them out, go to our website at sportshistorynetwork.com/sportshistorybooks. Pick up your copy today. Soundtrack provided by Kevin MacLeod of filmmusic.io.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello and welcome to the Sports History Network Showcase, our in-house show featuring SHN podcasters talking sports, talking history, and talking sports history. My name is Oz Davis, host of the Sports History Network's Truly the Goats podcast. And joining us on this episode of the Showcase is Dana Auguster, host of Historically Speaking Sports here on the Sports History Network. Dana, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine, man. Glad to be here, man. I've been looking forward to doing this with you for a while.
So let me ask you this. According to your bio on the website, like me, you're coming out of the newspaper tradition, but you're not exactly in a major market. So what were you covering for the Morgan City, Louisiana Daily Review?
Mainly high school sports, a little bit of LSU, a little bit of Tulane sports, that sort of thing. It was a small daily newspaper. Mainly, they had 5 or 6 high schools within the area, which was, it's basically that area is mainly high school football, and actually high school baseball was like the main sports that was contested in an area where they have powerhouses in both in that area. So a lot of it was high school baseball, high school football, and a lot of high school stuff. Every now and then I would go to an LSU game to cover it, especially if we had like if a local guy that went to one of those schools, and I would cover them, do a feature story on them, that sort of thing. So that's where I got my start pretty much.
So how did you get into sports history? I mean, basically on your show, you're covering, college level and up. How'd you get into that then?
Well, sports history has been a interest of mine ever since I was like about 9, 10 years old. I can remember when I was like in elementary school, like going to the library whenever we have like library day at school, and going straight to nonfiction and the sports section of the library, and just reading up on everything that I could get my hands on. That's where it really got started, and then along the way, it kind of grew into something even bigger and over time. And that's something that I've always had a major, major interest in as a kid growing up.
Are you reading anything these days?
As of right now, I'm not reading anything because I have a lot of different things going on, with the podcast and other things going on work-wise. But as of right now, no, but I need to get back to kind of like, get my juices flowing and get my fix, you know what I mean? So, with someone who likes to read, especially sports history, you need that fix every now and then, and I haven't really found anything as of yet.
What are some of your favorites?
As far as like books are concerned, one of my favorite all-time books is the autobiography of Red Auerbach called Let Me Tell You a Story.
Huh, no kidding.
And that is a really, really good book. Like I said, I love all kinds of sports. I love reading a whole lot of different things. There was another book that I read years ago, and when I lived in Louisiana, now we live in Atlanta, and it kind of got lost in the move. But the name, I forgot who wrote it, but it was a book called The Minority Quarterback. And it was an interesting choice for me because it took place at the same time I went to Southern University. Southern University, as you all know, is a historical black college and university. And the book is about Marcus Jacoby, who was a white quarterback playing quarterback at Southern University. And this happened at the time I was there. So it tells about his story, where he came from, his experiences playing quarterback at a predominantly black university as a white quarterback. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, that is. So I'll have to check that one out. So how did you come to start doing podcasting? Is this your first podcast, what you do for us?
Well, yeah, this was the first. It was a very interesting story how I got started. Over the number of years, I started it as a blog that I would write every now and then, about sports history. But I have a tendency that when I write, especially about sports history, is that I'm long-winded. So some of my friends just asked me, say, dude, why don't you do a podcast? And I've been kind of sitting on the fence about it, for about a couple of years. Like, yeah, I would do one. Do I have time to do one? Do I have, can I devote that kind of time to it? That sort of thing. So, and as it turns out, one of my friends was like, D, you got to do one because you know too much stuff. You can sit down there and tell a story about anything in sports history. To me and to all of us, why don't you just do one and just see how it goes, So right around that time, I started doing some things on Twitter, like posting different things on Twitter every day about sports history, this date in sports history, that sort of thing. And as it turned out, one particular day, this is right around Thanksgiving time, last Thanksgiving, I get a message through Twitter, and it's from Jeremy McFarland. He was like, hey, I would like to have you on the show just to talk about your interests and that sort of thing. So I'm like, cool. I mean, I texted back like in about 2 seconds. Of course, I said, yeah, definitely, I'm on. So I got on with him and started talking about, the topic that we were going to talk about was the Saints-Falcons rivalry, because I live in Atlanta, but I grew up in Louisiana. So I've seen the rivalry on both sides. And we started talking, and we started talking about that, and he started talking about Hurricane Katrina, and I mentioned that I went to historical black college, and I saw Steve McNair play when he was in college, and it just evolved into something, and it was like a really, really cool experience for me on his show. And he asked me, it's like, you got experience in writing. I've also have experience in radio doing this, and he was like, I like your cadence, I like your style, I like your enthusiasm, so he kind of talked me into doing this, in a roundabout way, not trying to talk me into it, but my experience on his show was like, yeah, I really want to do this. And so that's how it turned out. That's how I got started. I had so much fun on his show that I decided, look, I'm going to go ahead and do mine. I'm going to go ahead and do one. So right around the Super Bowl is when I dropped my first episode, and I've been going ever since. The Sports History Network proudly presents the newest member of the collection of podcasts dedicated to examining sports from back in the day, the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast. This is the show that explains the history of your favorite sport 1 week at a time. I am your host,
Let's
Dana
talk about your podcast here at the Sports History Network. What's the philosophy? What's the methodology?
Well, historically speaking, sports is something that I just kind of put together. I wanted to be both kind of dealing with current events, but putting a historical spin on current events. Like, for example, we're talking about like the show that just dropped today, actually. I talked about all of the Final Fours that took place in Indianapolis, going all the way back to 1980, and I kind of touched on every single one, all 7 previous Final Fours that took place in Indianapolis. And I kind of do that, and then through my Twitter, I post something on Twitter, 2 or 3 things every day on Twitter, sometimes more, on certain like certain sporting events that had anniversaries on that particular day. And I kind of build my show around those things, as well as putting a historical spin on stuff that's happening right now in sports. So that's where the methodology, that's where the philosophy comes in. And plus, it's, I try to make it fast paced, try to make it interesting, that sort of thing. So that's where it comes from.
Yeah, it's also very structured.
Yeah, I try. I mean, with an experience, I had experience in radio. I did, going all the way back to my college days. I was in radio this is going back 1996 was when I got started, and all the way through 2011 I had been doing radio on the side of, along with newspaper. I had a radio show for a time and that sort of thing. So it was, I was kind of like dabbling in both. And the shows that I did, that's where I got a lot of the ideas from. That's where a lot of my experience comes from radio and newspaper. So the structure of it is kind of like what you would normally see in a kind of a old school type of radio show that you would hear like every day. Very structured, different breaks and that sort of thing. And I kind of want to do that to keep keep it going, keep it flowing, make it interesting, that sort of thing.
Without too much man behind the curtain kind of stuff, what sort of preparatory research do you do?
Well, a lot of it is just like on the fly type of things, like maybe 50% of it is stuff that I already know offhand. Some of it I just do some research on different places or whatever. It's like, okay, like I would kind of like quiz myself on like, okay, when did this? I knew this took place, but I'm just trying to figure out when did it take place. And different places where I go daily to get like the Today in Sports History type of deal. And basically that's where I get it from. Just a lot of it is just, like for example, there's one place I go that talks about today in history, and they got broken down into different today in history and music, and today in world history, today in U.S. history, and they got sports. And I go down to that particular point, and I read through different things and pick out different things, and like, oh, okay, this happened today, so I could put that on there. And then when the show comes around, what I would do is just take one or two things that I find the most interesting that happened during the last 7 days, and build a show around that. Or then just find one major thing, and use that as a main event, or use it as a shout out, that sort of thing. So that's where a lot of it comes from.
Okay, so far you're covering various events, various happenings, teams, even rules in, let's say, the big four of North American sports. You've got some college basketball in there, of course. We'll talk about the Final Four in just a moment here. But do you have a favorite sport or a favorite league or anything?
Well, people ask me that all the time, and I say, what's my favorite sport? I say, whichever one is going on right now.
Uh-huh. All right. I like the attitude. Will you give us a tease of an upcoming episode of Historically Speaking Sports?
Well, one particular show that I'm in process of doing right now is coming up within the next month or so. I'm going to be talking with the MVP of the 2007 College World Series from LSU, Jared Mitchell. He's going to be a guest of mine in a couple of weeks. Because we're going to be talking about that, being a native of Louisiana, watching him play both baseball, and he played football for a short time for Nick Saban when he was at LSU. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that coming up. A little bit of NBA stuff in between. And the one that just dropped today, we're talking about the history of the Final Four in Indianapolis. So we got a lot of different things coming up, a lot of things in the hopper that's coming up pretty soon. So check it out and stay tuned.
Okay. Well, let's talk briefly about the Final Four. We're recording this on Monday, the Monday of the finals, the 5th of April. And, okay, so, of course, we've got Gonzaga versus Baylor. Gonzaga survived UCLA in overtime with a nice near half-court shot by a guy who is a prospective, top 2 or 3 player in the NBA.
Yeah, prospective lottery pick, Mr. Suggs. You're right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, God, he's so clutch, isn't he? And he's probably going to get that MVP if Gonzaga completes the undefeated season. And
now I think cut you off right there. If Drew Timme has another great game like he did the other night, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the MVP, other than Suggs, because he's one of the most diverse and one of the most versatile big men I've seen in the college game, maybe since Kyle Singler of Duke. Mm-hmm. And he won it in 2010 when they beat Baylor in Indianapolis. So, I mean, you see a lot of this big man, Drew Timme, for Gonzaga is very, very clutch. But they got to win it first. And I think that going up against Baylor. Baylor is maybe the most defensive-oriented basketball team on college that I've seen in years. I mean, they are so fundamentally sound defensively. It's going to be basically your classic immovable force against the irresistible object type of deal tonight.
But isn't Gonzaga going to be all about live by the three, die by the three, as usual? I mean, basically, if they're hitting, they're going to win, right?
The one thing about Baylor that is not really stated, and I really saw this in their semifinals against Houston, was that they really closed out really quickly on 3-point shooters. So they're going to have to, play that inside out game, mainly inside. They usually, Gonzaga, from what I can tell, go inside out. But I think tonight they're probably going to have to go outside in. Kind of change things up a little bit to deal with Baylor, especially if they close it out on their shooters quickly, like they did Saturday night against Houston.
Great. All right. So now we can hold you to that because this particular episode is actually going to come out after the game is in.
That way everybody can test me. I like that. That's a challenge. I like that.
Yeah. We've done that before on this show. I made some very bad Super Bowl predictions along with my co-host.
I'm not going to mention that. I'm just going to keep quiet about that.
I always say I'm great at making predictions, except in sports, politics, and the weather. Everything else, I'm awesome.
Well, I mean, I think that's pretty appropriate with everybody. I mean, like, when it comes down to predictions, I tell people, don't go by what I say. And I've been accused by a lot of my friends. Oh, the reason why you picking that because you're using history as a thermometer or whatever. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. Just don't bank on it from me. You know what I'm saying? So don't follow me too closely. Because I am guilty of that. I'm not even gonna lie. I am guilty of that from time to time.
Okay, let's go down the wormhole briefly. You brought it up, so let's talk about this. Do you believe that such a thing as a losing culture exists, and a winning culture for that matter?
To a point, I think. To a point, it does. Take, for example, I'm just going to use this as an example. I'm a Chargers fan, deep down. I am a big, huge Chargers fan. And is there a losing culture with the Chargers? I don't think so. But it just seemed like sometimes they just get in the way of themselves. You think of a losing culture, I think of Cincinnati, the Bengals. They've been losing for years and years and years, but they just need like an attitude change or whatever. And in winning culture, you got the Yankees, you have the Patriots, you have the Lakers, the Celtics. I mean, they have a winning culture. So there's something there, but I think that at times we make a little bit too much of it. But there is something there that I guess that maybe if a person is, say, drafted there or goes there in free agency or whatever, or is traded there, they're like, oh God, we're going to here, I have no chance of winning or whatever, as opposed to somebody getting traded to the Yankees or traded to New England or traded to Tampa, traded to whoever else. They're like, oh, we have a chance. So they may put out a little bit more, they may do a little bit more. So there is something there, but I think that maybe as a culture, we put too much emphasis on that.
Well, we also put a lot of emphasis on coaching and front office, and that also kind of snowballs.
You're right especially with the front office. Like you got some people in pro sports that either try too hard or try to put their own stamp on it. I've heard somebody say this. I say that nobody in the history of sport has ever gone to a stadium to see the owner. It's the players that make everything. And the owners wants the fans to know, okay, I'm the one who put this together or whatever. But fans don't care, But that's how teams can get messed up, when the owner meddles too much. Sometimes it works. But especially if you have an owner that knows what he's doing, i.e. Al Davis for a time, because he used to coach.
Right. But, I remember covering the Raiders during the 90s, during the aughts in their decline when they were just useless. And, for example, what they would do is I read a couple of interviews with players who would be like, Yeah, we'd be like in spring training, and then all of a sudden there's two new guys on the sidelines, and nobody knows who they are. They're just like assistant to the assistant coach. This kind of thing.
Right, right. And that sort of thing happens all over,
Right, but it's an example of bad hiring. And the thing is, now they've streamlined it because they gave Gruden every job there is possible. Plus, they don't have any money. They ran out of money to pay salaries because of so many losing seasons. So stuff like this can snowball. I also covered the Lions, where they were drafting a receiver every year that washed out, and then the end result of this is Rod Marinelli coaching them to 0-16.
So like I said, having a losing culture, having a winning culture, I mean, having those two things do exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think that in a number of cases, sometimes there's a thing of trying too hard, and trying to find that big, as far as like other franchises, they just walk into championships.
Yeah.
I mean, like, they stumble into them, while others like the Bengals or the Lions or the Chargers, we're still waiting, to find that right mix. Now, my Chargers have come close several times, over the years and been disappointed right at the end. But, it's like we have a winning culture. It's there, but it's one of those things where we're waiting for the other shoe to drop constantly.
I remember the one. I mean, I'm sure you don't want to be reminded of it, but I always think of it is, they go 14-2.
2007.
Yeah, I believe they still have LaDainian Tomlinson at this point, right?
Yeah, they said no. Tomlinson was there. Tomlinson almost got into a fight after the game with I forgot who with, but they were doing the lights out dance on the 50-yard line, and I was like, yeah, bro, yeah, go after him, bro. You don't do that to us. I was just that upset after the game. That was like the last time I was really, really upset after a Chargers loss.
Yeah, wow.
And we were better than New England. You could sit there and say what you want. We were better than New England.
Well, they could have been. They would have been in the Super Bowl. They would. And the guy fumbles the
and
interception.
we would end up playing the Bears in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, fumbles the interception. It's just like, what? In any case, actually, this brings up another question. What do you make of this report that one of the co-owners is suing the other one because of this massive debt that they've piled up because nobody in Los Angeles cares about the Chargers? What do you make of all that?
Well, first of all, I just thought that moving out of San Diego was a mistake.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I thought that in the beginning. Like, I understand you trying to grow the franchise and what's not, but you have you can see both sides of the argument, really, because you have one, you've been the only team in Southern California since 1994, okay? And you haven't really capitalized on that, really. You kind of tried, but but it didn't really work. San Diego, the Chargers was the first pro franchise in San Diego, so why leave? Okay, just build a new stadium, But trying to build a new stadium, the Padres have been trying to build a new stadium for a decade until Petco Park was built, But for some reason, they just could not get a new stadium deal done in San Diego, and the Chargers ended up moving to LA. And then now you're facing this huge debt. Dean Spanos a lot of people, he's like one of the worst owners, or one of the most hated owners in all of sport by their fan base. And I understand why. I remember one somebody said, if you want to see a sellout, look in the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's been one of those things where, again, with us, sometimes we just can't seem to get out of our own way. We drafted a future elite quarterback in Justin Herbert, right? And now you got this,
Yeah, for me, the thing about the Chargers is, okay, realistically speaking, look, the truth is, San Diego, not a great sports market.
You're right, it's not. It's really not.
Awesome weather. If you're really into sports, you might go see a baseball game. But odds are you're going to the beach, man. The whole city is on the beach. It's like, right. Why would you go to a basketball game when, again, you can, I love it. And plus, there's a lot of other stuff to do in San Diego as well. So it's not a great sports town. But geez, even the Rams coming back to LA was tricky because, guys my age, Generation X folks, they remember the Los Angeles Rams, okay? So they're ready to move right back in with them. But otherwise, dude, the Raiders are so entrenched in California, and maybe to some extent the 49ers are your team. But it's just like the Chargers had no chance. No chance.
No, I mean, the Chargers moving to LA, I was like, they spent that 1 year in LA, and why did they move? Why did they stay there just 1 year? Because nobody was going to see them play. Because the Rams were there, and Rams were way more popular. So they ended up moving to San Diego. San Diego is a bad sports market, I mean, for obvious reasons that you just laid out. It can't be no worse than Atlanta, where I am right now. But that's another thing. But that's a totally different reason why Atlanta's a bad sports market.
Why is Atlanta a bad sports market? I would love to hear this. I mean, you have all 4 sports, right? The Flames are still there, right? Or no, wait, they moved back to Calgary.
Yeah, Atlanta had the Thrashers, the Atlanta Thrashers.
That's right.
And they moved to Winnipeg and became the Jets. They just rebranded them the Jets. But Atlanta is a city where not too many sports fans, many people that here that are sports fans are not from here. Atlanta is a very transient city. In other words, there's a lot of people come from a lot of different places that's here. And plus, Atlanta has been snake bit so often by their teams getting right up to a championship and then losing for inexplicable reasons. The Braves of the 90s winning only one World Series.
Yeah.
And that one World Series, they nearly gave away. Not to mention what happened in the Super Bowl against New England. That was classic. Because when I was watching that game, I watched it with some friends, and I said, y'all better keep scoring and scoring and scoring, because if you don't and start getting cute, New England's going to come back and take it from you. And sure enough, that's what happened. And Atlanta is just a bad sport. On its face, you would think it has a great sports market, but it's really not. The Falcons are up and down. The Hawks are mainly down, and when they are winning, nobody cares. That's the crazy thing about it.
Yeah, that is weird. That is weird, because for a long time, the South in general was so starved for Major League sports that the Dallas Cowboys were their favorite team.
Yeah, it still is. That's still the case now.
Okay, you're in the Atlanta area, so let's talk about the recent decision by Major League Baseball to pull the All-Star game from Atlanta. What's your take on that?
I think that pulling the All-Star game was something that I thought was eventually going to happen, that Major League Baseball, because we've seen it before. Because the NBA did a very similar thing in North Carolina, pulling the All-Star game out of Charlotte. I forgot for what. I think it was for the bathroom bill or whatever. But I kind of saw that happening in Atlanta, and which is I think is going to be a really big blow, because Atlanta's still trying to show off their new stadium, their new ballpark, Truist Park. It's a beautiful stadium. I've never been in there yet, but it's a beautiful ballpark, and I think that it's going to hurt them in that way. But it was something that I kind of saw coming. Do I agree with it? Yes and no. I do agree with it for the optics of it, because Major League Baseball and then Coke is trying to do something, and then Delta's based here, and Delta's thinking about doing something. So there's a lot of things that's going on with that. Do I think that it's going to be detrimental, obviously, to the economy here? But as far as the optics of it, I don't think it's really going to do much. I really don't. Again, I'm on the fence about it. I think it's a good idea, but at the same time, what are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to promote or put across or whatever? Because you could do this and people are going to be mad about it, but on the bottom line, what's it really going to do? So that's my take on it.
All right. Dana Auguster, host, producer of the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast here at the Sports History Network. Thanks for joining us today.
Man, thank you for having me, and this was fun.
This has been the Sports History Network Showcase podcast. We'd like to thank our guest, John Auguster of the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, which is available through sportshistorynetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts. The theme song for the SHN Showcase is Quartz by Anitech, and it is available through a fair use agreement via freemusicarchive.org. SHN Showcase will be back soon with another Sports History Network podcast. Until then, this is Oz Davis saying stay safe and stay historical.
At the Sports History Network, we're all about sports yesteryear, and so we're so pleased to introduce you to Row One, an online memorabilia gallery and shop that brings your sports history to life anywhere. The Row One gallery includes over 5,200 gorgeously reproduced prints of team posters, game program covers, game tickets, advertisements, and more in baseball, pro and college football, pro and college basketball, and more. And any gallery item may be printed in a variety of sizes on wood, metal, canvas, acrylic, or poster paper. And in Row One shop, check out the thousands more of unique items with the retro and historical designs dating back to 1876, including t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, phone cases, mugs, blankets, pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com, ROW1, for access to the full Row One catalog and for gallery prints and gift items, plus get a 15% discount off all prints on the Row One Pictorium Gallery with coupon code SHN15. Follow the link on the show notes.